Peter says, will Ian Taylor write furious letters to the Royal Commission? Yeah, we haven't talked about Sir Ian Taylor's letter about Jacinda. It seems to me that the big issue, the only real issue that seems to have any kind of validity within this reflection on the leadership was the second lockdown in Auckland went for too long. Like, it seems that everyone was on board for the first stuff, because then everyone got to live, the only country in the world that got to live free for a period of time. And then the whole country from memory went into a second lockdown, and then Auckland stayed in it, and the rest of us got out of it, sort of thing. That to me seems to be the one thing. And if that's put it this way, and I'm not being flippant, but if that's the one error, that it should have been shorter and businesses should have opened up sooner. But the other side of that is research that says 20,000 saved lives. I'm still okay with that. It's not perfect. It never was going to be perfect. So once in a generation, if not, I mean, they talk about the flu in 1918, Spanish flu, so it's not even once in a generation, it's once in 100-year pandemic. And really, you can't compare, because the way people travelled and spread in the early part of the 1900s versus now is different. So it's really, there's no way to find out how this thing should work. So it's a first ever. There's going to be mistakes in leadership. The mistakes in our leadership erred on the side of people over profit. I'm still okay with that. You know, I'm not saying it was perfect, and I'm not going to minimize other people who did lose businesses or that sort of thing. But if it wasn't going to be perfect, and it wasn't perfect anywhere in the world, I would still err towards people over profits, people over companies. And for me, doesn't mean you don't think that. You can think the opposite, but I would still lean that way, and I think that's how this country lent people over profits, people over business. Yep. And it's over business, not over people in businesses, because people got to stay home and get paid when they were sick. There
was a benefit to businesses for that. You know, like, this is the thing. Businesses are made of people. The economy is made of people.
Yeah.
You know, you look after the people. That's as far as I'm concerned, that is top of the job sheet for a government.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have to worry about that being the number one job you have, then life's going pretty good. You know, you got a global pandemic, and suddenly it puts the fucking emphasis on keep your population alive, you dummies. But the thing that I reflect on, and certainly, I'm so glad that people are getting sick of Sir Ian Taylor's open letters. It's just, God, they're irritating. But I remember a chart or a graph or cartoon or something like that at the start of the pandemic that was just basically, this is how it's going to go. We are going to do this. The really bad thing doesn't happen because we did it. And then afterwards, people are going to go, nothing bad happened. We didn't need to do the thing. We didn't need to do the thing because we did the other thing. And that is exactly how it's played out. It's exactly how people have thought. You know, people are coming up with their own personal narratives. Political parties are coming up with their own narratives of like, oh, you know, we never supported this, or we did support this. You know, I saw a conversation on Blue Sky where somebody saw a relative of theirs speaking in the inquiry on the news or something, and it was just going, well, I had to do this to get out of town, and this person was like, I can tell you that bitch did not need to do that, she just wanted to get out of town. You know, and I freely admit that being tucked away down here in the bottom of the South Island, we were lucky. We didn't have to experience that second lockdown that Auckland did. And I realise a lot of people did it very, very tough that time. And it was something of diminishing returns. You know, people weren't sticking to it. It was still spreading. At some point, you just had to go, right, well, it's got out from underneath the glass. We need to accept that. But I think people need to be realistic. I saw a comment go past of like, oh, there shouldn't have been mandates because the vaccine didn't do anything. The vaccine didn't do what people thought it was going to do. And,
well,
and,
no,
and this
hang
could
on.
be,
Let's straighten this up.
Let me finish my thought, Pat. I was just saying, like at the start of it, when there was so much rush going on and people heard vaccine, they went, what in their brains, what are the vaccines doing? I know the vaccine's for fucking chicken pox. So if I get the vaccine, I don't get chicken pox. And I think that there was maybe some bad communication around what the vaccine was doing, or maybe not full understanding of what the vaccine was doing. What we ended up with was an understanding that the vaccine lessened the symptoms, but perhaps didn't stop transmission. It kept people out of hospital. But there are a lot of people that seem to be aggrieved that, well, I thought it would stop transmission. And it turns out that it didn't. So therefore, everything I've been told is a lie. And this is why we have a royal commission. So people can look at what worked and didn't work. Like there was a lot of communications, but maybe the population didn't have the understanding of what this was supposed to be. You see the difference overseas. You see people in hospitals being on ventilators. And that was the thing that we were all terrified here of, a massive spike crushing the public health sector. We wouldn't have had enough ventilators and people would have died, and all of the other reasons that people would have for being in a hospital, there'd be excess deaths there. And it didn't happen, and it came down to the vaccines. I've finished my thought now, Pat. Thank you.
First thing is, I looked it up today actually. Every year in New Zealand, about 60,000 businesses start and about 50,000 businesses close. Through the worst part of COVID, which I think was 2021 for businesses, 60,000 businesses started and 60,400 closed. So it was more, definitely, but it wasn't like 300% rise on the number of businesses, like perhaps another 10,000, and they were the hospo ones. All I was going to say, Chewie, before was to try and help the situation, because what you just said is not quite right, because it did stop transmission. It stopped transmission in alpha. When they developed the vaccine, and this is what the anti-vaxxers need to understand, it pretty much stopped the first variant of COVID, because that's the one it was designed around. As the variants changed and mutated, it got to the end, which I can't even remember the names of them all now, and basically what it did was keep you out of hospital, but it didn't stop transmission. If you go back and have a look at the numbers and the actual how it responded to the vaccine at the start, it was a very good example of stopping it and stopping transmission. By the end of the variants, before the new ones came in, it didn't. So that's actually what people need to understand. And when you still come across these people today, these anti-vaxxers going, they told us it would stop. But it's like the flu vaccine this year will stop last year's flu, or certainly attack last year's flu, but it won't do anything for this year's flu, because this year's flu hasn't had a vaccine made for it yet. So the truth is, it got lesser and lesser and lesser and lesser effective to stop it. But the point being, as you said, it made it milder, and it kept people out of hospital. So it was like a seatbelt. Yes, you can still die whilst wearing a seatbelt in a car crash, but it does lessen the chances of a very serious injury. That's what it was by the end.
And then you combine that with all of the other measures, the wear masks in public, limit your exposure to other people, in the mandates of staying home and that sort of thing. That layered defence is why we didn't have the death rates that we saw overseas. Like, right. I urge any of these people to talk to anybody that worked in the NHS in England and ask about their experiences during the worst of the outbreak.
Or Italy, or New York.
A war zone.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the reason that we have such a, it sounds horrible saying this, but better death rate is because of the lockdowns. It enabled us to keep COVID away from the majority of people until the vaccine came in. And the vaccine then gave much more protection to people. And that's actually the reason that the death rates were down. That in New Zealand, we got people vaccinated. It was later than some countries, but well before COVID ran through the whole country. And then after COVID ran through the whole country and the numbers looked similar to who got it, the reason the deaths weren't there is because people were vaccinated, and that was a mitigating factor.
100%.
So anyway, we're doing a story about that
doing
next.
This right when I just casting my mind back to when we started doing this, and we were talking to virologists and professors looking at that, and God, we were lucky with the people that we had on the show at that point, eh?
Yeah, totally.